Not white. Not my white. You can take your ball, but not my white.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. I guess I just need to wait now for participants. Let me put that up there. All right. We got this and this and this. I think I have everything I need.
Hey, Bobby, join yourself. Join your leg and see how good it feels. Yeah. Can't you start off and go to sleep? Yeah, that's okay. You can lick me. Just don't chew on me. Dusty. Wait. No chewing, you know that. You're a smart puppy. No. Okay, no chewing. She's been awake the whole time we've been gone? Alright.
No, she slept most of it. But she was laying by the door, so I wanted to get her up from there, so I did.
I keep forgetting.
Hey, Dusty. Come on, Dusty. Come. Dusty, come. No, don't talk back. Dusty, come. Come. That's a good girl. That's a good girl. Yeah. Come here. Come here, Dusty. Look here. Do you see that puppy? Yeah, do you see the puppy on the screen? Yeah.
That's not very fun.
There's a puppy.
Who's the puppy?
Huh? No, I was showing her herself.
Oh, I thought that was somebody's puppy.
No, no. Nothing is happening yet.
Okay. Come on, Dusty. You can go to the living room and play again. Come on. Come on. Ow, ow. Hi, girl.
Shh, Dusty. Dusty, hush. That's all the playtime I have. Goodness, nobody's showing up. I heard a bunch of crunching, but I thought she was.
Wait, what's going on?
That big biscuit is gone.
What big biscuit?
The one that Riley usually doesn't eat.
Oh, she ate the biscuit.
I don't know if he ate it or if Dusty ate it.
Oh, we got 2 minutes.
Yeah, nobody's.
Okay.
Huh?
Is she gonna lay down? Yeah, okay, she's laying down.
Hmm. Let's see, unmute. Good morning.
Good morning.
Trying
Can you
again.
hear me all right?
Come here. Dusty, come here. See. Let me get my phone and be sure.
Is it not working?
Yeah, I'm just waiting.
For what? What are you waiting for?
All right, here's William. Okay.
Girls?
Oh, sorry about the blackout yesterday. That was pretty bad. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah, apparently they're doing construction over on a street close to us, and apparently a construction worker cut the cable or something. But I had a very quiet day. Usually our phone is ringing off the hook with junk calls. And so no phone calls. So it was very quiet for the rest of the day, except for Dusty. Who is barking. Hello. Danita looks like she's concentrating. Trying to figure out how these silly things work.
Aren't you also happy we get to see each other twice this week?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. And if the rest of the kids show up, I guess that'll be good. If they don't, that'll be a problem. So let me go ahead and get the PowerPoint back up. P 15.2. That's what I want. Okay, let's see. Back to the screen. Share screen. Okay. And go to play from current slide. All right. This is where we were. So we've been talking about the filtrate. Remember, step one is where the filtrate comes out, and we get 20% out of the capillaries, and then that means that 80% is going to go back into 80% is going to go back into that efferent arteriole. The efferent arteriole is going to narrow down, and branch to form the peritubular capillaries. Okay, so as this happens, they're going to go through the reabsorption step. So water is going to be reabsorbed, glucose is going to be reabsorbed, and also other nutrients and minerals that might have gotten into the tubule are going to be reabsorbed back into the blood. Now, some of this is going to require a carrier, ATP and a carrier molecule. So if the carrier in the tubules, remember they have all of that machinery in their cuboidal epithelial cells. So in there they have carrier molecules and they have ATP so that they can carry things across. Now, you came across that term called tubular maximum. There are a certain number of carrier molecules available to carry nutrients and minerals across. If there's a low number of carriers, then the kidneys are going to be limiting the amount of that substance in the blood. If there's a high number, the kidneys are going to allow a high concentration in the blood. Okay, so it's all going to depend on how many carriers are available. And of course, that's something that's predetermined, whether you're supposed to have a lot or just a little of a particular thing. Again, another very interesting thing of a design feature, that you only have enough carriers for what is needed. Okay, and then of course there's going to be passive reabsorption going on all the time with the molecules that are small enough to re-enter the capillaries by osmosis or diffusion, and that would be the little molecules like water, urea, sodium ions, chloride ions, and so forth. Okay, then we're going to go to step 3, which is secretion. Let's see. Let me see if I can move this. And secretion is going to happen in mostly the distal tubule. So this is going to be the waste or excess products that are still in the capillaries, but they need to be sent back to the tubules. And so most of this is going to happen in the distal tubule, and usually it's potassium or hydrogen ions. And of course, the hydrogen is involved in pH control, as we will see. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Now, this is the filtration, the first step in the urine formation. And here you see the peritubular capillaries. Now, this isn't what they really look like. That's just a kind of diagram. And you'll see the proximal tubule here. And then this tubule is going to drop down and become in about 10% of the nephrons. It's going to become the loop of Henle, and that's only available in 10% of the nephrons, but that's an adequate amount to carry out what needs to be done. So we'll take a look at this a little bit more closely in a few minutes, but I was showing you this here, and this is where the tubular secretion is going to happen, is in this distal convoluted tubule, where the final elements are going to be taken out and others put in. Okay. Then we go to step 4, reabsorption of water. The amount of water in the body is very critical variable. So the water that has to be reabsorbed has to be tightly controlled. So the kidneys are going to be regulating how much is reabsorbed and how much is released as urine. The interstitial fluid in the kidney is more concentrated than elsewhere in the body. And by concentrated, we mean full of solute. So most interstitial fluid has a concentration of 300 MOSM per kilogram. The greater number of solutes means that the MOSM per kilogram will be greater. The blood plasma, for example, has a concentration of 300. The cortex of the kidney also about 300. But when you get down deep into the medulla, the concentration is going to reach 1200. And that's because there is a large amount of urea in the medulla. So as we look at the loop of Henle, the descending limb is permeable to water and solutes. So as filtrate enters the loop, the solute concentration is about 300. In the medulla, the concentration becomes greater, resulting in water being pulled out of the filtrate by osmosis and diffuses, and urea diffuses in. So as the filtrate passes down the descending limb of Henle, as it gets further down, in this descending limb, it's permeable to water. So it's going to be, water is going to be taken out and put back into the capillaries. And then solutes are going to be diffusing in. And so by the time it gets to the bottom of the loop, the concentration in the loop is about, and in the surrounding medullary interstitial fluid is about 1200. So that's quite an increase. And the water ends up in the vasa recta, which is the capillary. So we got more water in the blood, more solutes in the filtrate. Then we come to the ascending loop. The ascending loop is permeable to water or any other solutes. So if anything needs to be removed, it's going to have to be removed from the ascending limb by active transport. And this is usually going to involve your sodium, potassium, and chloride ions. They have carrier molecules available in the ascending limb and can be actively transported out if needed. These ions are electrolytes, and we need them in our body. They're very important in the work of the nervous system, as well as other things. But if more are needed, they can be transported out, but water cannot come in. Nothing else can leave or come in except for what is indicated that needs to be taken or passed out into the bloodstream. And so as it moves up, since water cannot follow the solutes out, that we're going to have a few solutes leaving, but the water cannot leave. So the concentration is going to become more and more dilute and get down to 100 MOSM per kilogram. And by the time you get to that point, urea is the main solute left. So the end of step 4 involves the distal tubule. We have presence of ADH that determines how much water is retained in the urine, thereby controlling the levels of water in the body. So what is ADH?
I can't remember the name of it.
Adenohyphosphate,
Uh,
if I remember correctly.
no.
It's adeno something.
Anti-diuretic hormone.
Oh.
Anti-diuretic hormone. And where is it produced?
In the, is it in the hypothalamus or thalamus that it's produced?
Well, the hypothalamus, and it goes down into the posterior pituitary. So this is one of those little, a couple of little hormones that are stored actually in the posterior pituitary.
Okay.
So what ADH does is make the distal tubule and the collecting duct permeable to water. So that means water can be taken out. So if you are short on water in the body, that means you might be really, really thirsty, or you've been outside and you've gotten real hot and sweaty and you've lost water. That's going to cause the body to produce more ADH so that the water is brought back into the blood. So it stays in the body. If you've got plenty of water in your system, you're not going to have ADH. If you're well hydrated, not much ADH will be produced because you don't need to keep the water in the body. You can get rid of the water. So if you drink lots and lots of fluids, you're going to be able to eliminate that in the urine because it's not water that's needed. It's water that needs to be eliminated so that you don't get swelled up. Okay. So here is another diagram of the nephron with the loop of Henle. And we want to focus on this area here because this area is the one, the descending limb. This is the area that's going to be permeable. When we get down to, where did my little thing go? Here, the lower loop of Henle, this is where the concentration is going to be great because the water has been taken out here and put back into the bloodstream. This is the ascending limb, and this is where the concentration is going to go down because solutes have been taken out, but the water cannot go out because it's not permeable to water or anything else. So it's a very controlled area of what is going to be leaving. Okay, here's your distal tubule and then the collecting duct. Okay, now that finishes pretty much the process of urine formation, and it is a pretty lengthy process. At least when we talk about it. But if we think about the big picture, you've got how many nephrons in each kidney? Do you remember?
Like
Million.
1.3 million.
Yes. And so all of these are going to be active, carrying out all these steps. It's a continual process. So it's not going to take nearly as long as it takes us to talk about it. So it's a fairly rapid process going on, although it's a very complex process. Now, once you get to the collecting duct, so we've got, if we're going to think about our drop of filtrate, it comes into the proximal tubule, goes to the loop of Henle, goes to the distal tubule, goes to the collecting duct. Then where does it go?
To the renal pelvis.
Yes, but before it gets there, it's got to go through some other structures in the kidney. And you can see that figure 15.3 in your book. Before it gets there, it's going to pass through what's called the minor calyx, and then the major calyx, and then the renal pelvis to the urethra. So if we were to trace a drop of filtrate through a nephron and through the several structures in the kidney, that's what it would be. Okay, proximal tubule, loop of Henle, distal tubule, collecting duct, minor calyx, major calyx, and renal pelvis, and then ureter. Okay, let's see, wrong thing. All right, storage and release of urine. That involves the bladder. So remember, the bladder is made of stratified transitional epithelial tissue, which is stretchy. And again, here we have just the right kind of tissue that we need for this to function well. We have two sphincters for control. The internal works automatically, so when your bladder fills, that's automatically going to open, but the external is going to be controlled voluntarily so that we can determine when we want to release it up to a point. So if your bladder gets really, really full and you sneeze, it might not be exactly voluntary at that point. You guys might not have that issue as much as some other people do. Dusty. My child is interrupting class. My dog child. Okay, another function of the kidney, urinary system is blood pressure control. And that is going to be accomplished by cells that are near the afferent arteriole called the juxtaglomerular cells. And these cells have sensors in them that can detect when the blood pressure is dropping. And when that happens, they are going to release an enzyme called renin. And renin is going to activate a protein in the blood that's called angiotensinogen. And then the angiotensinogen is going to produce a peptide called angiotensin 1. So remember, proteins long, so that we've got the angiotensinogen, which is going to be a long protein, and then it's going to break down into a peptide, angiotensin 1. The angiotensin 1 is going to circulate in the blood stream through the lungs, where it's going to meet up with another enzyme, which is going to create angiotensin 2, which is the actually effective enzyme, and that's going to increase vasoconstriction, which means the blood vessels are going to tighten up. It's going to make you thirsty so that you will drink water, and as you drink water, that increases the volume of fluid in the blood, and that will also increase blood pressure. It increases salt appetite because sodium also increases blood pressure. And then it's going to increase sodium reabsorption in the kidneys. So your kidneys are going to be reabsorbing more of the sodium. Okay, and that will bring about an increase in blood pressure. Now, there's other things that control blood pressure. This isn't the only thing, but this is one of the controls, one of the systems that controls blood pressure. here are the juxta means next to, glomerular cells, next to the glomerulus. Okay. And then another function of the urinary system is the acid-base balance, or the pH of the blood. So again, there are sensors in the kidneys that are going to detect if the blood pH is off a little. So if you have remember our range is very, very narrow. It's like 1 point, 1/10 of a point, I guess you would say. 1/10 of a point off. Either way could cause problems. So we've got 7.35 to 7.45 is the range. It's a very narrow range. If you go below 7.35, that can cause a condition known as acidosis. Now, it's not really acidic at that point. Your blood isn't acidic because you're still at the 7 range, but it's moving more toward the acidic range. And that little difference is going to cause a decrease of the nervous function. It can cause coma, it can cause death. And this is a problem that people that have diabetes often have is, that they can have is the condition of acidosis. Sometimes they go into what's called a diabetic coma because the blood pH is too low. Now, if it gets above 7.45, you can have alkalosis, which causes an over-excitation of the nervous system. And that's going to bring about convulsions, which again could result in death. Now, the blood pH is different from other parts of the body. For example, the pH of cells is naturally more acidic because they're going to be producing carbon dioxide all the time. Whereas the blood has to be a little bit different pH, and that's what it has to be for that to function well. Okay. Now, blood pH can be changed by several things. One is gastric vomiting, because you're losing acid, and that can lead to alkalosis. Now, that's going to have to be perhaps a continual occurrence over maybe several days. It's not going to be just you throw up and you're going to go into alkalosis. It's going to have to be a pretty drastic and serious problem before that's going to happen. Diarrhea also can lead to acidosis because of the loss of bicarbonate. And again, this has got to be where it's a pretty major problem, not just what we have when we have the stomach virus. Okay. Intestinal vomiting, that's where you're losing not just the contents of your stomach, but also the contents of the intestines, which is pretty bad. At that point, you're losing bile, which is a base, and that can affect the blood pH. If your kidneys are not functioning properly, they are not going to be able to control the hydrogen ions, and so that can cause problems. Respiratory dysfunction, also because of the CO2 levels that change. Okay, so there's 3 ways that blood pH is controlled. One is the buffer system, which is a mixture of an acid and a base which resists change in pH. It's the least effective, but probably the quickest way to work on blood pH, but it's not going to last real long. The respiratory system also has the way of doing that. It's a slower process, but it's more effective. And that has to do with the rate and depth of ventilation and the carbon dioxide levels in the blood. We talked about that in module 14. The kidneys is the slowest but most effective way to control blood pH. So the cells of the distal tubules are sensitive to the pH changes. So if there's an increase in the pH, it's going to lead to a decrease of hydrogen ions in the urine. So they're going to retain those hydrogen ions to increase the pH, because the hydrogen ions are associated with acids. Okay, and it also reduces the bicarbonate ion or the base reabsorption. A decrease in pH leads to an increase of hydrogen ions in the urine, because hydrogen ions indicate the presence of acid. Again, we need to get rid of those. So we're going to put more of the hydrogen ions in the urine. Okay, so just in case you haven't figured it out, the urinary system shows incredible design. So as you go through here and you look at all the things that it does and all of the chemical things that are going on with it, it's just really, truly amazing. Okay, and I have the experiment set up again. So I thought we could go through that again, or I'll go through that, and I'll go ahead and try to post the other one on the other place. So let's go in and into my laboratory, and we will do this experiment real quickly, and you can write down your notes and we'll see what we get here. Okay. Okay. So that, I got to figure out how to get that where it's going to show downward. Yeah, you want to go grab me a textbook? So I have already done all of the stuff with the distilled water and got everything rinsed properly. And we have it we're going to set this up on a book. Let's see. How does that help? It's going to slide off. Yeah. Let's see. I see. Yeah, I guess you can see this. Okay. Here's our cabbage water. This is going to be the buffered. This is the non-buffered. Everybody see it okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. Here's baking soda.
Guess we can just take
Half a teaspoon. And this so can you see that that water is turning a dark blue?
Ooh, yeah.
All right, now for the Sprite. All right, so the baking soda is a base. So I've already put a base in this. The purple color that we see over here just means that the pH is about 7. So we want to bring the pH back to about 7. And so we're going to do that by adding Sprite, which has the bicarbonate ion. So there's 1 tablespoon in there. That didn't do much. 2 tablespoons. Need to be
Change
noting
the
how
word.
many tablespoons of Sprite we're putting in here.
Yeah.
So it's
Such a waste of good Sprite.
four.
Here's 4. You can see it's getting a little more purpley now. Starting to look a little better. 5. 6. I'm trying to get it back close to that color.
It's getting a little bit close.
Yeah, it's getting there. There's 7. Starting to definitely look more purpley, but it's not quite as light or purple. All right, this might do it. 8. Let's hold them up and see. No, it's still a little bit dark. All right, one more.
I can almost smell the Sprite.
Yeah. But Sprite would not be good with cabbage water.
Oh yeah.
It might with the baking soda added.
They're still not the same.
Yeah, let's see.
That was 8 or 9.
That was 8, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're okay. We'll put in one more and call it good because I don't want to run the cup over. Okay. Yeah.
Was it a tablespoon or a teaspoon of baking soda?
A half a teaspoon. Okay. Now I'm going to start adding vinegar. And this is what I have in my little bowl because I don't have a dropper that I can find. And I'm going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of vinegar. So here I'm going to add it to this one first, the non-buffered. We'll see what happens. See how the color gets much pinker now?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good bit pinker. And I'm going to add one here. We'll see what happens. Nothing. No change here. Put some more over here. It's a little pinker. So that means we've changed the pH. Add some more here.
How much vinegar are you putting in it?
1/8 of a teaspoon.
Okay.
So now I'm up to 1/4 of a teaspoon in here because I put in 2/8, which is 1/4. 3/8 now. Very pink. Okay. We're still not seeing a change in this one. All right, we'll put one more in. Okay, so you can see how much it's changed from the original color on that by adding 4/8 of a teaspoon of vinegar, so that's half a teaspoon. But notice this has made very little change.
It's pretty much all it's done is gone back to the original color.
It didn't change.
Yeah, it didn't.
It changed a tiny bit, but
Yeah, so even if we put in, I put in a tablespoon of vinegar now. Now you're going to see a little bit more of a change.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, it's also very fizzy. but
Might taste good.
still it's not nearly as much as it's changed here. So what's happening is the baking soda is reacting with the acid that we put in, and it's neutralizing the acid. And that's how a buffer system works. So if we went the other way and added a base to this one, then it would start turning really the dark greenish, bluish color. But this one would not have changed color much. So because it's got both an acid and a base in it. So whatever comes in there, a base or an acid, it's going to resist any changes to the pH, because you've got the base that would neutralize the acid, and the acid that would neutralize the base. Okay, so that's buffer system, and that's how those buffer systems that we have in our bodies work. Okay. So
How much vinegar do we put in the second one?
we put in 4/8
Half
of a
a
teaspoon.
teaspoon.
So
Half a teaspoon.
yeah. And
Oh, somebody left.
I think it just turned off their camera. So I will go ahead and get your test sent out to you today, now that I can send things again. And you already have your study guide. So any questions about anything?
No.
No.
Okay. Well, I think that's all. I think we've got it covered. So have fun studying.
Okay.
Alright.
Remy,
Yeah.
did you watch Ian's senior thesis last night?
No, our
Your internet was still down.
it was down until about 9 o'clock last night.
He
It's a little
wrote his
after.
on the Rapture. It was really good.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. So I guess we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Have a good weekend.
You too.
See y'all on Thursday.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
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 Where's my thing? End meeting. End meeting for all.